everybody, and welcome to Heronbrook Farm Kitchen. It is amazing and fantastic to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us today. What we're going to do today is we are going to introduce you to making bread. So this is going to be a very basic introduction. We make all of our own bread here at Heronbrook Farm. We're baking almost every single day, whether it's for the family or for guests who are staying with us on the farm. We make a whole range of different breads. We make traditional English loaves, we make French bread, we make Italian bread like focaccia and ciabatta. What we're going to do today is I'm going to take you through the simplest bread of all. So if you're sat at home and you're thinking, I really want to make just a really simple loaf, this video will teach you exactly what you need to do so that you can do this at home. So let's jump in. Okay, so today we're going to make the simplest possible loaf. Incredibly easy to make and consists of 4 simple ingredients, all of which you can get from the supermarket, all of which readily available. So the first ingredient you're going to need is some flour. This is a white loaf, so we're going to use white flour. The only thing you need to look out for is it needs to be strong flour, strong white flour. The strong refers to the protein content. And it's that protein known as gluten that's going to hold the loaf together and allow it to rise. So plain flour has a much lower protein content, so you need to look out in the supermarket for strong flour. The second ingredient is free and comes from the tap because it's water, just ordinary plain tap water. A lot of recipes tell you that it needs to be warm and tepid. To be honest, we never bother with that. We take the water cold straight from the tap. The third ingredient is salt. We like to use sea salt, but ordinary rock salt is absolutely fine. Again, available from the supermarket in a pack like this. You don't need a lot of it, and one of these is going to last you forever. And then the final ingredient, the thing that makes it bread, the thing that makes it rise, is the yeast. And broadly, there are 2 types of yeast available. We use this baker's yeast, as you can see here. That gets delivered to us from our supplier Bertinet, and that is a sort of, I don't know if you can see that, it comes as a sort of beige block, and we crumble that in order to make the ferment, as we call it, to raise it. If you can't get hold of that, you can buy in the supermarket quick yeast, which is dried. This one is made by Allinson's. It's very good. We don't use this at all these days, but literally a tin of this or a sachet of this will last forever. We're going to make the bread today with this fresh yeast. We're going to use 10 grams of fresh yeast in this loaf. If you are going to use the dried yeast, and you'll get just as good results, you just want to cut down on that a little bit and use about 7 grams. So those are the 4 ingredients. Let's jump in, talk about the equipment that we're going to need next. So your basic kit to make this loaf, but frankly any loaf, I've got it spread out in front of me. It looks like there's quite a lot of stuff here. Really, you don't need that much stuff, and you certainly don't need specialist stuff just for making bread. I'm sure if you go around your kitchen, you'll find most of this already available to you. So the first thing we've got here is a scale, a digital scale. My first top tip for making great bread is to use a digital scale for weighing everything, whether that's the flour, the yeast, and even the water. You'll get much more accurate results, and what that means is that what you do is entirely repeatable. Because you don't want to make a great loaf one weekend and then the following weekend the recipe changes slightly and it's a disaster. So if you use the digital scale, you'll be able to get absolutely consistent results every single time. You're also going to need some stirrers, spatulas, scrapers. This is my favourite. This is called a spoonula. It's a silicone thing, it's heat proof, etc. I use these all of the time. And also a tiny little whisk like this. What we're going to do is put the yeast into the water and whisk it up just to dissolve it, and this is great for doing that. You could use a teaspoon, but we like using these. You're going to need a selection of bowls, big bowls, small bowls. You don't really need them. We use these for weighing out ingredients and making sure we've got everything at exactly the right weight before we combine things. But I would suggest buy yourself a batch of bowls and you're away. And some measuring jugs. Again, I've got 2 on the table here. I do tend to use 2 because we're weighing the water. This is my favourite thing. This is a scraper. We've got hundreds of these lying around the kitchen. We use these all of the time. A small plastic scraper for scraping out the bowl, for dividing dough, for scraping it off the table. These are vital. I would say really difficult to make bread without one of these. I will put some links in at the bottom here for where you can get all of this kit. Most of it comes from one supplier, which is a company called Nisbets, but these scrapers come from Bertonnet, which is a baker in Bath, an amazing French baker, and you really should look him up on YouTube because I learnt an awful lot from him back when I was getting started. And then the final thing here on the table is a spray bottle, which is just absolutely fantastic for dampening the bread and for getting a bit of steam into your oven when you're ready to start baking. So there's a couple more bits of equipment and I'm going to take you around the kitchen and show you those. So the next thing you're going to need is a stand mixer. Obviously you can knead bread by hand. Lots of people do. Frankly, we never do that here in the commercial kitchen. Because we don't have time, and you can get just as good results using a stand mixer. This one's a KitchenAid. It's a medium size. We've had this 8 or 9 years. It just goes on, and it is absolutely fantastic. It's got a big stainless steel bowl, as you can see here, which is where we're going to do the mixing. And then you are going to need a dough hook, which is this fella here, and that's what does the mixing for you. So do get yourself a stand mixer. As I say, they are absolutely fantastic, and I would definitely advise you to get one of these instead of buying a bread machine, because you're just going to get much better results. And then finally, clearly, you're going to need an oven. We're going to be using our big commercial oven for making the bread today. A domestic oven is absolutely fine for making bread, and we used one for years when we were first getting started. This one is as I say, it's big, it gets very hot very quickly, it's really good for making bread, it's got a steam injector, but you don't need any of those things just to get yourself started. Okay, another piece of equipment you're going to need, and I did forget about it earlier, so apologies, is a loaf tin. We tend to use these ones at Heronbrook Farm Kitchen, which are big, heavy aluminium tins. They come from America, but there's a UK importer. Again, I'll put the link to Bakery Bits down in Devon, who are awesome. I'll put the link to them down and you can get yourself some of these. These are the smaller ones. We also use a slightly larger one, but you can pick up ones like these from your supermarket or kitchen shop locally. To be honest, we don't use these so much for making bread. We use them for things like fruit loaf and banana bread and that sort of thing, because we like to make our bread in tins that have straight sides, which these do. We think you get a better rise. So you're going to need a loaf tin. My recommendation is one with straight sides. Okay, so we've got all of our equipment sorted and we've got our ingredients, which I've already weighed out. I'm going to put the recipe on the info card here so you can click through and get the full recipe, but I'm also going to just put it on a little panel over here so that you can see what we're using. So we've got 500 grams of strong white flour. As I say, I've already weighed that out. I've put it in a glass bowl here so you can see it, but I normally weigh that out straight into the bowl of the stand mixer. So we'll just get that in there like that. Then we have got salt. We've got 10 grams of sea salt. That goes straight into the stand mixer like that. And then we've got our water, 325 grams of water and 10 grams of fresh yeast. If you're using the dried yeast, do it in exactly the same way, but you only need 7 grams. Okay, so I'm just gonna crumble that into the water here. You don't have to be careful doing this, it can just go in, and then I'm gonna use my little whisk. As I say, you could use a teaspoon, and I'm just gonna whisk this up and combine it. Oh, I'm spilling it there now. Having lectured you all about how precise you need to be, I've lost a gram. Never mind, I'm sure it will still work out absolutely fine. So you don't need to beat the hell out of this. This is just literally stirring it until it dissolves, which, as you can see, it has now done. And I'm just going to grab a spatula. Bear with me, because I'm just going to mix that salt in that we chucked in there. I'm not going to do it too much. There we go. And then literally we go straight in to the flour with the yeast and just scrape down anything that didn't dissolve. That's it, and we go and put this on the stand mixer. Okay, so here we go, over to the stand mixer. Click that on there. And then we take the dough hook and that just clips on underneath here. And then we crank it up and we get it going on a slow speed, just like that, until it comes together. So you can see that's starting to come together nicely now. Another minute or so and all of that will have formed into a nice dough ball, and then we can turn the speed up. And then what I like to do is to knead that for about 8 minutes. So I just set 8 minutes on the timer, and then literally we can just leave that for 8 minutes to do its thing. Okay, so we're about 5 minutes in, and as you can see, it's all come together beautifully. The texture has changed. It's a lot silkier now and smoother. If we could get it out and feel it, you'd certainly notice the difference from when we started. So another 4 minutes to go, and then we'll get this tipped out and into a bowl. Okay, time's nearly up. The beeper's going to go off in a second, and as soon as it is, we'll get it turned off and brought over here. There it goes. So we're going to turn the mixer off now. So there you go. As you can see, it's still a little bit sticky, but not really sticking. If you get my meaning, it might just slightly stick to your fingers, to be honest. But what we're going to do is use a bit of oil to stop that from happening. So what's really important now at this stage is that you don't add any more flour, because that's going to ruin your proportions. So we're just using a little bit of rapeseed oil, put a bit in the bowl and a bit on the work surface. You can do this on a wooden work surface in your kitchen, and then just with a bit of paper towel or blue roll, we're just going to oil the bowl round, just like that, get it nice and coated, and then just spread the oil around here on the work surface, just like that, and then grab your scraper. I told you were going to need one of those, and just scrape that out and stick it down on the table there, and then any bits that are sticking, get them out. And then you might need the scraper, but if you've used the oil, as you can see, it's just coming together beautifully, not sticking to me at all, and we can just shape that into a ball and drop it into our bowl. There we go, absolutely perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cover this with cling film, and we're going to leave it for about 2 hours to do its first rise or first prove, by which time it will have doubled in size, it will be a lot softer, and then once that's happened we can turn it out and shape it. For its first rise, we're just going to leave it here in the kitchen. It doesn't need to go in the airing cupboard, it doesn't need to be particularly warm. The length of time it takes will vary depending on how warm your kitchen is. In here it's about 2 hours, but this is a reasonably cool kitchen when we haven't got all of the ovens on. Right, welcome back. This has had 2 hours to a little bit more, 2.5 hours of proving. As you can see, it's puffed up, still got the cling film on. Just a little pro tip is when we're making multiple batches of bread, we write on here with a Sharpie so we know which one is which, because you don't want to get out of sync, if you know what I mean. So take the cling film off, which is always easier said than done. So get that off there. And as you can see, it's all puffed up beautifully. You can see some little bubbles on the surface there. You're going to need the loaf tin, which we've just lightly oiled inside. You're going to need your magic scraper, and you're going to need some flour. Now we can use flour at this stage because it's not going to absorb any more flour, because it is more or less finished all of its proving and rising. So we just scrape it out, and as you can see, it comes out nice and clean because we oiled that bowl earlier. And then you don't really need to be too rough with it now at this stage. A lot of people will say this is the stage where you're knocking back, which somehow implies that this is some sort of violent exercise. It really doesn't need to be. Be quite gentle. All we're doing is just gently flattening it into a rough square rectangle, and then you just bring the sides in. Move that out of the way so you can see. Bring the sides into the middle, a bit like that, and then press down in the middle to make a sort of a seam there, and then you can just bring it over like this, slightly rolling it between your fingers and seal it all in. And what we're looking for is a nice sort of sausage shape. Cling film there, get rid of that. Nice sort of sausage shape like that, that will just fit into the loaf tin. So once you've got your sausage, just drop it into the loaf tin like that, nestle it down nicely, and that is that. And all we're going to do now is cover this with cling film, and then we'll leave it for another 2 hours until it's got more or less to the top of the tin, and we'll be ready to bake it. Couldn't be easier. Okay, welcome back. As you can probably hear, the oven's on. It's been preheating at 220 degrees for the last 30 minutes or so, so it's really, really nice and hot. What we're going to do now, I've taken the cling film off, and as you can see, the loaf is looking absolutely fantastic. It's risen just about to the top of the tin. So I'm going to get this in the oven, give it a hit of steam with the squeezy bottle, and get it baking. Okay, straight into the middle of the oven. And then we give it a really good spray with the squeezy bottle just to get a nice steamy atmosphere in there. And then we turn it down to 200 degrees. And that's going to stay in there now for 30 minutes. So I will just set the timer and we'll get that going. Great, see you in 30 minutes. Okay, we're about 5 minutes into the bake, and I don't know if you can see, I know the door's really dirty, sorry, too much baking going on. I don't know if you can see, that is rising absolutely beautifully now. It's a good inch, maybe 2 inches over the top of the tin. The steam, put the light back on, the steam has done its work. What the steam does is it keeps the crust soft for that initial bit of spring, which is what gives the loaf its rise. So we're going to leave that for another 25 minutes and we'll come back and take it out. Okay, a couple more seconds to go and the timer will go off, and then we can get this bad boy out of the oven. There it goes. So I just need to get my gloves on because that is going to be hot. Wow, look at that, absolutely beautiful. Right, I've turned the oven off so you might actually be able to hear me now. Look at that, absolutely beautiful. So we're going to get it turned out. So there it is, and we'll just turn that out, slips out beautifully onto the cooling rack. Get rid of the gloves. So what a beautiful loaf, lovely dome top. Slightly paler on the sides. What you can do if you want it to brown up is you could stick it back in the oven now out of the tin, and that would just brown up the sides. If you just tap it, you want it to hear it being a little bit hollow. That's how you know that it's done. But an absolutely beautiful loaf, really pleased with that. It smells absolutely delicious, and I'm really looking forward to eating it. So thanks ever so much for watching. I've really enjoyed making this bread with you today. It's ever so easy. I do hope you really give it a go and try and do this at home. It's so much better than bread you can buy in the supermarket, and I'm sure that you're going to be amazed by what you can produce in your domestic kitchen. We're going to put a whole load of recipes up on YouTube over the coming weeks, so please do remember to subscribe. Do leave us some comments. I'm sure I've forgotten some things, so ask us some questions. We'll be sure to reply. Really looking forward to going along this journey with you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.